On PM Express tonight, a conversation we've been having since Ghana recorded 2 cases of COVID-19. The lockdown effect. We'll be looking at how effective it's been. Should we tighten up? Should we loosen up? We'll also be drawing experiences from other countries. Remember, it's a global pandemic and almost every country in this world is recording cases of COVID-19. So far, the total confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Ghana still remains at 214. We got to know that from the last address of the president. And we have 5 deaths. I mean, we've known that for some time now. We've not had any more deaths for a couple of weeks now. Now, 6 regions have recorded some cases, and this is where our conversation is going to be focused on tonight. Greater Accra region has 189, Ashanti region has 12 cases, Northern region has 10, Upper West region has 1, Eastern region 1, and the latest is Upper East region that recorded 1 case on Friday. So only Greater Accra and Kumasi have been affected by the lockdown. By now, I'm sure there are conversations of whether to extend the lockdown to other places. Since the lockdown, 4 other regions have recorded the cases, and you saw the breakdown shortly on your screens. Upper East has been affected, the Eastern region and other regions. The president yesterday announced the lockdown will be reviewed after an assessment of the evidence from mass testing and contact tracing this week. And he mentioned a figure, 15,000 and over results we are awaiting. He says that health service is due to receive results of some 15,384 out of 19,278 people they have tested since the lockdown. Listen to these figures and watch the figures closely and carefully. It is where we're going to be focusing our discussion tonight. 15,384 results we're waiting from the 19,278 people that have been tested since the lockdown. This will make a change whether we are reviewing our lockdown to all the regions or we are loosening up. Now, he says it is the results of these tests that would determine our future course of action. And that is why you should watch those figures carefully. I have all the people who've got answers to the questions. So tonight, the question we're asking, is it time for a nationwide lockdown? That is the question I'll be posing to all the experts who will be joining me shortly via Skype on PM Express tonight. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on PM Express. My name is Aisha Ibrahim, and I'm glad that the health experts who know the answers to all the questions are joining me via Skype. I'll start with Dr. Winfred Barr, who is the Greater Accra Regional General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association. Doc, I'm grateful for your time. Dr. Michael Owusu is also a virologist at the Department of Medical Diagnostics at KNUST, and he's also a researcher at the KCCR, one of the centers that are able to test for COVID-19. I'm grateful for your time, Dr. Michael Owusu. And all the way from the U.S., Dr. Betta Sewa Ayi is a specialist in clinical infectious diseases and an adjunct assistant professor of medicine at the Kansas University. I'm grateful for your time, Doc. So I'd like to start on the president's statement yesterday indicating that we are about to enter a critical phase of our fight in the coming week, as the Ghana Health Service is due to receive the results of some 15,384 out of 19,276 persons who have been reached through contact tracing. More importantly, he says it is the result of these tests that will determine our future course of action. I'd like to start with you, Dr. Michael Owusu. Now, the first time or the last time we spoke with you on PM Express, you were in full support, in favor of a targeted lockdown. Now, after 1 week of lockdown of Accra and Kumasi, and with all the matters arising after the lockdown, do you still stand by your position?
Yeah, good evening to all your viewers and listeners. So I still stand by this, and I have the strong belief that what we are doing is in line with recommendations by WHO we are still in the process of achieving our objectives, and which will enable us make clear decisions as to what to do. So let me recall a bit what the WHO said. So the statement they made is that it is not enough to call for a lockdown, but then a lockdown in itself does not extinguish an outbreak or the virus group, but it must be accompanied by 6 key actions. The first is that you should use it as an opportunity to expand, to train, deploy your healthcare and public health workforce. The second thing is that it must enable you to implement a system to find every suspected case at the community level. The third is that you should use that opportunity to ramp up productive capacity and make available testing for majority of people within the lockdown period. And then you should also use it to equip facilities, identify and then adapt what you need to treat and manage your patients. Last one is that you must develop a clear plan and process to quarantine contact. So if you look at what is happening, we have data so far of where all the positive cases came. We have data of the contact of all these positive cases. We know the people who came to the country, I think about a month before the mandatory quarantine. So it's moving to these areas, searching for these first line contact, second line contact, testing them, setting radius, diameters from other neighborhoods, will give you an understanding of the true burden of cases, which will inform you as to the next action to take. And for me, I think that the data that we will get after this period or after this week will enable us to understand what is happening in these two populated areas, and will tell us whether to extend lockdown or perhaps to generalize this to include at part. So I think that in line with the WHO's call, what we are doing is very active. We are not just sitting down and locking down, but we are moving ahead to search for all possible cases. We'll bring them out, quarantine those who have to be quarantined, isolate those who have to be isolated. And then I hope that we should be able to have that measure to enable us to move with these kind of issues of our COVID.
I believe in making this assessment, you've brought in or you figured out all the issues that have come up after the lockdown. So many people, fleeing from Accra to other regions before the lockdown. We've seen people running away from quarantine and what have you. But I want to bring in Dr. Ban there. Doc, before the lockdown, the Ghana Medical Association was very loud of a lockdown. You wanted to accept even a strategic lockdown before the two regions were locked down. Now, would you say that you've been vindicated after this targeted lockdown? 1 week on after the two regions were locked down, would you say you've been vindicated? All right, so I'm told we'll try and get Dr. Ban back online. We lost him there. But let me bring you in, Dr. Betta Ayi, also from the U.S. When this whole thing started in the U.S., America started its lockdown gradually with selected states. Before I could say Jack, the whole thing had spread to all 50 states of America. As a frontline health worker, what would you say? Would you say that the lockdown of two regions, or first, even share with us how effective that was, the selective lockdown of states in the U.S.?
Well, I think I would speak as more as a global citizen than more than a front health line worker, because my concern about this disease has been, before it got to me that I had to treat as a frontline worker, started from my concerns in China. And if you want to evaluate how effective even a focused lockdown is, you just have to look at Hubei province, which had 80% of China's cases, and China had 99% of disease. For most of January, we're just watching China. Italy was watching China, France, everyone, just watching to see what would happen. And on January 23rd, the Chinese government undertook a lockdown of Hubei province. And that is why, unless a government chose to go and evacuate people, You couldn't move or do anything. And we're seeing the results. 9 weeks into their lockdown, they have decreased cases. It's not like there's been complete stopping of their transmission. There's still transmission, but it's much, much less. And today, China is exporting PPEs and their economy is getting back. The point is that the lockdown, in the first speaker was right, in that the lockdown buys you time. It's not everything, but I think it needs to be handled with a sense of urgency. I always give this example. If a fire is burning a house, and then you're saying that you want to wait and see because it's only in one room, you want to let it consume the whole house before you get the fire trucks there, you would be making a mistake unless you don't understand what a fire does. But if you've seen 2, 3, 4, 5 houses in the neighborhood burn down, you move with a certain level of speed. I mean, starting from China, look, the world should not have a pandemic right now. Martin Luther King said something that the evil in society is when people who know what they need to do refuse to act and stay silent. That is the real evil of society. Why we knew China was the only country exporting disease and no leader could tell China to stop traveling until the Chinese government put a lockdown on Hubei province beats my mind. Why Europe waited and waited and waited till March 30th. So they put a cordon sanitaire around Europe beats my mind. When they watched and Europe was exporting disease, if Ghana hadn't taken a decision on March 21st that we were going to stop travel, look at the percentage of people who come into the country. With 10% of the 1,030 people as of today are positive. Can you imagine the amount of things exported into this country because other countries refuse to do a lockdown? So you know what? As a frontline worker, I get to see how people like Boris Johnson. I mean, today someone was asking me what is going to happen. See, when you get to day 8 of the disease and you start going into respiratory failure, it doesn't matter if we connect you to 20 ventilators. Sometimes you still die. If all the lawmakers understand that this is the severity of the disease, the lockdown will not even be a matter of discussion. It's going to be, you know what, there's fire coming, let's act quickly. Look at the United States of America. Look at the United States of America. You think the lawmakers were not watching what was going on in China for 3 months? Today is April 6th. It's almost 100 days into the year. 1,000 people are dying in America every day because the right decisions were not taken on time. Even as of yesterday, some states are not on lockdown. It's as though in Ghana, I'm happy that science, I've said this, that science is marrying politics and we're taking decisions. But look, this is not a disease that you sit and tap your hands and watch and wait and see what will happen. And secondly, you don't allow 205 to deceive you, because 205 actually means you probably have about 2,000 undetected, and those 2,000 will double every 3 days. And so in a month, just multiply by 1,000. If you think that way, it's almost like how the Bible says, without faith, you have to act. This is an illness. I will quote Dr. Fauci. This is an illness that when you act right, everybody thinks you're overreacting because you're looking ahead.
Certainly, Dr. Ayi, there are so many lessons. There are so many lessons that we need to learn from the U.S. And of course, the figure is even now 214 and not 205 anymore. And certainly, we're expecting more than 15,000 results of more than 15,000 people who have been tested. So, of course, yeah, we're having to brace ourselves for the days that are coming, because we'll be having to see more of the cases jumping in. But thankfully, Dr. Ba has joined us. Dr. Ba, the Ghana Medical Association was always asking for a lockdown. And you said if we couldn't do a nationwide lockdown, we should do a strategic lockdown. So, of course, 2 regions, Accra and Kumasi, are currently on a lockdown. 1 week after the lockdown, would you say you've been vindicated? Do you feel vindicated, Dr. Ba?
Yeah, thank you very much, Aisha. Yeah, so the Ghana Medical Association actually called for a total lockdown. And I believe that this was because we've done our homework and learning from precedents. We've seen that that is that is the best way to go. But don't also forget that we live in a society and there are so many things to take into consideration. And so that was when I personally said that then let's do a strategic lockdown where we lock down Greater Accra and then Greater Kumasi. And that was done. Now, 1 week on, yeah, that question is quite significant. Should we ask for a total lockdown? I want to say that if you look at the precedents from the United States, by February 21st, they had only 16 cases. By March 27th, they had 100,000 cases. And as you said, today is within a week is just 200,000. Now, when it comes to lockdowns, we all know it's a very expensive thing. It's a difficult decision to take. But everybody knows, like we said, the disease, it moves when people move. So if we want to stop it, then we need to get people to be still. We have to get people to stop moving. So the lockdown, there is no doubt, is the best thing. But the thing is, can our economy support it? Is it going to be very feasible? We all know it's going to be very expensive for us. I think what we should be talking about now is what will be the cost benefit ratio? What will be if we decide to lock down totally now and pay the price, then wait and then get to the stage of the US? Which one will it be? And these are very difficult questions to answer. But what I can say is that for us, for now, there is an expert committee. We are waiting for the result of the 15,000 cases. We are talking to other people, and we are hoping that we have to put a lot of things together to decide that. So personally, we haven't come to a conclusion as to whether to do a total lockdown or not, because we know there are a lot of things that go into that. Yeah.
Well, but whatever goes into that, the economic factor will not be for the health professionals to decide, because you are the frontliners and you look at the situation and make your recommendations. Let me bring in Dr. Michael Owusu back into this conversation. We're now awaiting results of some 15,384 out of 19,276 persons who have been reached through contact tracing. It is the results of these tests that will determine our future course of action, according to the president. Aren't we better off doing a total lockdown now?
Yeah, so let me respond to some comments which were made earlier. It's good that we understand the trajectory of the virus within the African population and within Europe and Asia. So if you have studied the way the virus moves, it follows an exponential curve, which is why cases rise in thousands and multiples of thousands in Asia and then in Europe. If you have studied the cases so far in Africa, for instance, Algeria, from 25th of February 2020, where they had one case, it took almost 2 months for them to get to about 1,330, with about 9.8% mortality. If you look at Egypt, similarly, it took about 2 months for them to get to about 1,000, with about 6.4% mortality. If you look at Burkina Faso, similarly, it has about close to about 80, where they are about 4.9%, with about 345 cases. We seem to have a unique pattern when it comes to the growth of the virus, which means that it slows down. I mean, as takes a certain period to pick up compared to what happens elsewhere. For the variables that makes this happen, I'm not able.
Well, we're losing Dr. Michael Owusu.
Exactly to do.
Okay, Michael Owusu is back.
Yeah,
Yes, Doc.
if you want to make a decision, there are variables that are to play. The first is to be able to look at every single item in your table and what you need to do to reduce the reproductive number of your virus. And there are options available. And then you must do the cost-benefit analysis for each variable that you choose. If you take social distance, for instance, I mean, some data from the CDC Oxford have found out that you can decide to close all your groceries, close all facilities. That can cost you close to 1 billion. And still, you can achieve the reduction in the number. Then, alternatively, you can still do that by encouraging social distancing, where you close bars and restaurants, you restrict travel restriction, impose travel restrictions, you mount temperature checkpoints, you disinfect all your vehicles, cars, and environment, you do contact tracing, you make sure you search actively cases, and then you test this to inform you as to what to do. You can equally achieve this in another way by not following the most expensive way of closing everything. So for me, if you want to lock down, the question is how long do you want to lock down? Because all of us are susceptible to this virus. Nobody is immune. So if you lock down a certain section, deal with it, and you are not able to put in all your intervention measures, you are only waiting for a time only for a group of people to reintroduce it into another susceptible population. And then the epidemic curve will start again, and it will never end. So ideally, if you look at a country which we have about 60% informal sector, with many people who live hand to mouth today, then you are better off picking up variables that are not so expensive, then you can equally use to achieve your purpose. For me, if it is expensive locking down the whole nation, which is what I would recommend we do, you can begin to ensure that across every part of Ghana, social distancing becomes something that has to be done. Hand washing, sanitizing must be applied to every place. Disinfection of vehicles, of roads, bars, everywhere must be done. All other places restaurants must limit their number, ensure that clubs and sports clubs are closed, and minimize large gatherings across every part of Ghana. And then, based on your testing capacity and based on the data that become available, you understand the burden of cases which you have, and then begin to move in with your intervention. I think that with our unique situation as Ghanaians, we need to look at social context and not necessarily follow suit like others have, because what pertains to the US and what pertains to Europe may not be what pertains to us. So I believe that looking at the variables at play, working around each of them to minimize the reproduction of the virus will give you a step ahead rather than closing down. And you ask yourself, for how long do you want to do that? How expensive will that be? And whether you end up achieving your purpose, even if you shut down the whole country. So we need to look at all this and then decide on how best to do, not just go in one direction because perhaps other countries have done that. I think that every nation has its own way of dealing with this. We must look at our unique situation as Ghanaians and apply all the variables that will enable us achieve our objectives.
Well, I stand to be corrected, but it doesn't look like we've made much progress since the lockdown of the two regions. And why am I saying this? After the lockdown of the two regions, we are now having to have 4 more regions record cases. And part of the reason is probably the fact that people were fleeing from Accra and Kumasi to other regions that were not affected by the lockdown. All of these are the reason why people think that a nationwide lockdown is better for Ghana. And having listened to the US experience, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to bring in Dr. Betta Aye to share with us the US experience and whether we are better off locking down nationwide now or later. Stay with us. You're live on PM Express. Many thanks for choosing us. My guest on the show via Skype, Dr. Michael Owusu, is a virologist with KNUST and a researcher at KCCR. Dr. Betta Aye is a specialist in clinical infectious diseases and adjunct assistant professor of medicine at the Kansas University. And Dr. Winfred Ban is the general secretary, Greater Accra Ghana Medical Association. I'm grateful for your time, gentlemen and lady. Before we went on that break, Dr. Michael Owusu was making the point that we haven't reached the stage where we should be calling for a nationwide lockdown. Now, from the U.S. experience, which we just heard from Dr. Betta Ai. I'll bring you in briefly, Dr. Betta Ai, but let me bring in Dr. Winfred Barr on this one. Doc, before we went on the lockdown, our cases were 161. And it was just 2 regions at that time we're told that had recorded, and with Accra being the epicenter. Now we're having 4 more regions join the league. So now we have 6 regions, with the Upper East region being the latest region to join. Would you say that we still haven't reached a stage that we should take that decision of going for a nationwide lockdown?
Okay, thank you. So you realize that the essence of a lockdown is to reduce movement so that the technical people can go in to identify cases, do contact tracing, do more testing, isolating people, and then treating people so that it doesn't spread. Now, when we were locking down about 100 and something, now we are 200. I would say that has defeated the purpose of the lockdown, because you see, when you lock down, you are now going to identify the cases. You are now going to do the contact tracing, and so if you look at the curve, it's definitely going to come. I won't be surprised if tomorrow they come and they say we have increased. I won't be surprised at all, and I'm expecting that we are going to go up. But the question is, how fast are our numbers rising? Where are the cases coming from? Then we will be able to, if you look at the one in the eastern region, it's an imported case. If you look at the one who traveled from Accra, it's also maybe inland, but we could say it's imported. So can we say that at this point we are taking our time to test all the contacts, and then from there we will decide whether we should do a nationwide lockdown or not? But let me be clear on this. You know that the Ghana Medical Association actually called for a lockdown right from the beginning. Like I'm telling you, that would have been the best. That's the ideal situation. But you and I know that wasn't taken, because a lot of things have to be taken into consideration. So going on that lane, we are expecting that we'll get the results of the next 15,000 of the contacts that were tested. We have to look at what is the distribution of the new cases. If we think that it is getting into all the regions, then yes, we'll be justified in calling for a nationwide lockdown. Putting everything else in perspective. So, like I say, as far as we are concerned, we think that a lockdown now would have been the best, but putting our peculiar situations in place, I think that let's wait, let's get the next results, and the experts are there to advise government, and that is the position now.
Well, I would also like to get some understanding of what the president means by saying that we are yet to get to the critical phase of our fight in the coming weeks. But let me bring you in, Dr. Betta Ai from the U.S. So we are waiting some results of 15,384 out of 19,276 persons who have been reached through contact tracing, and it is the results of these tests that will determine our future. From where you sit, what do you recommend? A nationwide lockdown now or later?
Okay, thank you. See, for me, I have not changed my tone for the last 2.5 months. I was not even for a nationwide lockdown. I was for a global lockdown. And just to support, or at least talk about what Dr. Ban was saying, you have to cut your coat according to your size, okay? And even putting lockdowns aside, let's look at our situation in Ghana. When you have 1,000 cases, 20% of them will be admitted to the hospital. That's already 200. Of those 1,000, 5% of them will get to where Prime Minister Boris Johnson is at right now. I don't know where he is in the ICU, but you would have 5% of that 1,000, which is 50, requiring critical care. At this point, I believe the government has purchased some ventilators, but before January, Ghana does not have the capacity to handle more than a
We'll try and get Dr. Betta Ai there, who's joining us from the U.S., who's sharing some experiences from the U.S. Point of view, and also recommending some measures and some lessons we can learn from the U.S. But Dr. Michael Owusu, I'd like to understand what the president said yesterday. He said we're yet to get into the critical phase of the fight against COVID-19 in the coming weeks. Explain that to me as a health worker. Dr. Michael Owusu, if you can hear me, I'm just asking that the president yesterday made a statement and he said we are yet to get to the critical stages of our fight against the COVID-19. And as he also indicated that we're waiting the over 15,000 people who have been tested, we're yet to get their results, and that will determine. I am asking, as a frontline health worker, and from where you sit, explain that to me, what that means, that we're getting into the critical stage of our fight against COVID-19. Okay, we lost Dr. Michael Owusu there. Dr. Ba is still on Skype, and Dr. Ba, I'll put the same question to you. What does it mean to say that we are yet to face or get to the critical phase of the fight against COVID-19 in the coming weeks?
Yeah, Aisha, that's actually the truth. We are actually yet to get to that critical stage. If you look at all the countries, for example, South Africa, on March 1st, they had only one case. By the 27th of March, they had 1,170. You see, it's almost like slows. If you look at all the curves, it slows, and then once it starts speaking, nobody really can do much about it. And I believe that the numbers that will come out, the percentage of that 15,000 that will test positive, is really going to actually inform the next step in our fight against COVID-19. If the percentage is high, I'm sure that irrespective of the cost, the president will call for a nationwide lockdown, because we cannot afford to go the way of the US, Italy, and Spain. Our system just can't handle that. And so we have to learn from them. Like I said, as of February 21st, US had only 16 cases. Today they have 200,000. And we can't afford to sit there. So in as much as it's very expensive, I believe that, just like the president said, the results that will come out will actually is going to show us the next step forward. It's quite critical. It will be what will determine our next move.
Well, let's get back to who is back on the line. Dr. Betta Ai, you were earlier on explaining how we can draw some lessons from the U.S. experience.
Yes, I was explaining that the United States has 150,000 ventilators, and they even have 40,000 on what they call the stockpile. We don't even have more than 100 as we speak. We're about to purchase some more. So apart from looking at other countries and watching to see the social impact, the thing that should actually get us running is the fact that if we wait and wait and wait till we're getting 2,000, let's say the 15,000 cases, we get even 1,000 positive, and all of them in about 10 days will get to the stage where they're going into respiratory failure. Where are we going to keep these people? They're just going to die at home. So it's not even a matter of waiting for the test results from the 15,000. I mean, to me, that is actually not looking around at what has gone on in the world. I mean, China has given us a storybook to read. Italy has given us a storybook to read. The most pathetic story is actually the United States story. We don't have 250,000. We have 350,000. And that is after testing only 1.6 million out of our 300 million population. So I think if they finish testing everyone, we may have millions and millions of people infected. And today I was even reading that some experts are saying that the numbers of deaths reported is widely underreported. Because I think if somebody dies today, forms have to be filled, and so we're even behind. But last week, Italy was reporting 970 deaths, and we thought, wow, that's a lot. But the US is like easily reporting 1,000 a day. And even then, you should listen to the healthcare workers. Everybody is overwhelmed. There's not enough personal protective equipment. And so, really, the lockdown is like our simplest, effective tool. So we should not even be debating it at this time.
Clarify
We
that
should
for
put
me.
our
Nationwide
priorities
or strategic lockdown? Nationwide or targeted lockdown you're talking about?
Okay, you know, initially I was for strategic lockdown, but as I said, cut your clothes according to your size. If you know you only have 200 ventilators, you don't even debate whether you should do strategic or nationwide. Because if we're saying that the disease is in 6 regions now, you just have to project that in 2 weeks, you would have thousands of cases. And because you know you cannot handle them, you take actions now. See, with COVID-19, if you don't overreact, you are too late. And I drew this curve to show you, by the way. I don't know if your audience is going to be able to see it, but typically, you don't lock down for 2 weeks because, like you rightly said, the first 14 days after you lock down, you are actually going to see an increase in the number of cases because all the people who were incubating disease for 14 days before you went on lockdown will now start coming to the hospitals. So you actually see these studies have been done in China and other places. After they locked down on January 23rd, they saw a decrease in the cases after February 9th. It's after 14 days that you actually see that the people who are coming with symptoms have decreased. Now, even in those 2 weeks spent on lockdown, some transmission is still occurring, maybe not as much as the 2 weeks before. So you give it another 2 weeks to observe a decrease. And then in your last 2 weeks, which is given a 6-week lockdown, you actually start tasting the sweetness of the hard work you've put into it. And that is why China is still locked down after 9 weeks. And that is why when France actually saw that they had burgeoning cases, they did not hesitate to lock the whole country down. And immediately the president went to EU and said, look, I've locked down, but my lockdown, it's like Kwame Nkrumah said, the independence of Ghana is useless without the total independence of the continent. He went to the EU and said, look, I don't care if I lock down. Look at Italy, look at Spain. Let's just lock down all of Europe.
So of
That is
course,
proactive
so
leadership.
with
I mean, even
COVID-19, if you don't overreact, you're too late at the end
you
of
are
the
too
day.
late.
Well, Dr. Ba, a quick one. Update me on the PPEs to work with. The last time we heard from the GMA, you were complaining of lack of PPEs to work with. What's the situation now? You have enough to work with?
Well, I think, like the president said yesterday, they've brought in some more PPEs. But I think this morning on your station, one of my colleagues was saying that we can never have enough of PPEs because we can't even tell how our cases are going to go. And if it goes the way of China and USA, you know that we can't have enough of PPEs. So the issue is always to ask for more. Yes, some has been delivered to our frontline workers, but we still need more.
And what has become of the doctor and the nurse who tested positive? How are they faring?
I'm not directly involved in taking care of them, so I will not be able to say for now.
I guess I should put a direct question to you, Dr. Michael Owusu, now. Total lockdown now or later?
So I don't think so, because if you look at the cases we have, understand the nature of the cases, and look at the risk level. In northern region, the 10 cases we have is people who were coming from Guinea who did enter into the northern region. So we don't count as part of this. And then the one in eastern region, we know reported. The one in our west, we understand travel from Accra, perhaps something there. What should trigger, the alarm bells, having community groups, somebody who has no travel history, somebody who has not been with a patient who is positive, to have unexplained cases like that, then it is worrying. So for them to begin to take an action quickly, which is why we do lockdown. Lockdown to search for unexplained cases, for people being in the community who may be hot spreaders, search for them, isolate them, and then by doing that, reduce the. If you look at the all the people that you mentioned, I don't see evidence of community spread in these areas. It's greater across places where a lot of community spread are happening. The case in the US became worse when they report their first community spread case. Somebody who slipped into the community, it was difficult for them to do contact tracing. They were not sure how the person got it, which suggested that you never know. So if you have such questionable cases, lockdown of particular, when sit and from data available, I think that measures which we put in place early by the president have achieved some impact. Which I think that we still have to even warrant us to go for administrative.
Dr. Ban,
I
are you,
think that the
okay,
other
so
thing,
Doc, we'll try and fix your audio. Is breaking, but let me bring in Dr. Ban in. Are you not worried that after a lockdown of 2 regions, we are now having more regions coming in? I want to put the same question to you. Total lockdown now or later?
So, like I said earlier, the decision taken by the Ghana Medical Association to advise government to do a total lockdown was scientific, and ideally that would be the best. But I am sure you know that based on our circumstances, you have to take a lot of things into consideration. Now, I think that with the way things are going, if we can't do a total lockdown, then every region that has a case should be locked down, and then we do aggressive testing, contact tracing, isolation, and treatment. That is my personal view. This is not by the Ghana Medical Association. My association is still working behind the scenes. We are putting figures together, and it will come out at the right time. But this is my personal decision that if a total lockdown is difficult, we can lock down every region that has a case.
All right, Dr. Betta Aye, we have just a few minutes to go. A quick one there. You are, from the onset in support of a nationwide lockdown, but having looked at our situation, you think we can compromise and say that we don't have, that would be expensive for us, so let's not do a nationwide lockdown?
I don't. I think that we should do a lockdown, a nationwide lockdown, and not see a lockdown is not a cure for the spread. It only buys you time. The virus gets its envelope from human cells, so it's going around looking for fresh meat to eat, to put it that way. And so the lockdown just hides everybody away from the disease. And even if a family is affected. At least over here, you find that a man will come in with his wife. They both have it. Their son has it. Their grandchild has it. I would rather one house comes in with 6 people ill
so
than that person
definitely,
leaves to go see.
definitely a nationwide lockdown is what we need to do, so that we can save ourselves the trouble of what we are seeing in other countries. Thank you very much. Dr. Winfred Ba is the Greater Accra General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association. Dr. Michael Owusu is Virologist, Department of Medical Diagnostics, KNUS, and researcher as KCCR. And Dr. Betta Sewa Ayi is a specialist in clinical infectious diseases. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Many thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of our programs.